Britain's fields had long been dotted with barns, but the 18th and 19th centuries witnessed an explosion in these pragmatic rural buildings. The country's agriculture was picking up pace. The granary of Europe needed somewhere to thresh and store all its precious wheat, corn and barley. Many of these new barns were built with owl holes set high in gable ends. These small openings which let barn owls into the building to roost marked a change in how the birds were perceived by the men and women who shared their landscape. Far from barn owls being a macabre menace, farmers began to realize that these nighttime saviors could protect sacks of grain from four-legged thieves, those mice and rats that gorged themselves when backs were turned. The barn owl became the farmer's ally. Not everyone learned to love the barn owl, however. Throughout the Victorian era, thousands of barn owls and other birds of prey were shot or trapped by keepers who blamed them for attacking game birds. The 19th century obsession with collecting wild birds' eggs and taxidermy also hit the barn owl population hard. Few stuffy parlours were complete without a glass-eyed, heart-faced bird trapped under a dome. Only between the First and Second World Wars did anyone think to monitor the nation's barn owl numbers. In 1932, senior civil servant and bird lover George B. Blaker organised an emergency census and called upon the country to find and record its local owls. It was clear to him that something was amiss. The diminishing number of barn or white owls in England and Wales in recent years, read the call to arms, is giving concern to agriculturists and students of bird life. Blaker's census estimated a population of 12,000 breeding pairs, which, although unconfirmed, was thought to represent a significant drop in numbers from the early 19th century. The barn owl had, at least for a handful of ornithologists and enthusiasts, become a cause for concern. And yet the general public's relationship with the barn owl is still a peculiar one. While it regularly tops the list of the nation's favourite birds, we seem to admire the barn owl from a cool distance. We like them, but we don't know them. A brief sighting is a thrill, but as the barn owl is usually a tenant of the night, our paths rarely cross and we leave it at that. And so this book is an attempt to try to tell some of the story of the barn owl's daily, or should that be nightly, life. Few of us know what goes on after dark, underneath the moon, or the journey a barn owl takes from hatchling to full-grown magnificence. Each of the chapters begins with a snapshot of the 3 months from the first pip of the shell to leaving the nest, a fascinating time in the barn owl's early life. Behind the scenes, there have been some heroic efforts to protect this glorious creature. As we'll find out later in the book, the 20th century wasn't kind to barn owls. Changes in farming practices meant that most of the traditional farm buildings that barn owls used disappeared or were converted to housing. The rise of the combine harvester, which leaves much less grain behind in the field than old-fashioned reaping, and the introduction of silos, meant that easy gleanings are no longer to be found by some of the barn owl's favourite rodents. Certain pesticides, such as organochlorine and rodenticides, proved lethal for barn owls, causing a dramatic dip in their numbers. Because of the huge increase in the number of motor cars and an ever-expanding road network, traffic accidents have also become a depressingly frequent cause of death for barn owls, killing about a third of all fledglings born every year. It's difficult to say with any accuracy what the numbers are doing. Nocturnal animals are notoriously tricky to study and count, but most conservation groups agree that while barn owl numbers slumped in the mid-20th century, current estimates range between a cautious 4,000 and an optimistic 12,000 breeding pairs in the UK. In 1987, the Barn Owl Survey of Britain and Ireland recorded 4,450 breeding pairs. Following concerted efforts to restore barn owl numbers, the estimated population today may be as high as 9,000 to 12,000 pairs. America shows a similarly mixed picture. While some states, especially in the South and along the West Coast, have good population densities, many places are low on numbers. From New York in the east to North Dakota and Montana, some states have already suffered such losses of barn owl numbers that habitat restoration and nest box programs may be the only